The lobby was a blur of movement and low-level chatter. Pilots in uniform moved in packs, heading toward the bar or the gym to burn off the fatigue of the long flight. Michael moved differently. He navigated the lobby with a steady, singular focus, his grip tight on the handle of his suitcase. He bypassed the bar entirely, finding a secluded corner booth tucked away from the main thoroughfare. He pulled a heavy, thick book on real estate law from his bag and set it on the laminate table. The air smelled of stale coffee from industrial cleaner. He didn't order a drink.
That means got to death cell. What is an extent?
System then decided that closing for you. He didn't check his phone for messages. He opened the book to a dog-eared page and began to read. Around him, the rhythm of the airport pulsed with the chaos of delayed flights and restless travelers. But in his corner, the world narrowed down to the text on the page. He was not just passing the time, he was working. While his colleagues sought distraction to forget the job, Michael used the silence of the hotel to dismantle the walls of his own limitations. He turned a page, his thumb tracing a line of dense legal jargon, fully immersed in the quiet architecture of his future. The lobby lights dimmed in his mind, replaced by the sterile glow of a kitchen counter from years before. Michael stood in his apartment, the silence of the room broken only by the hum of the refrigerator. In front of him sat a stack of envelopes, edges frayed from being opened and shoved aside. He held his bank statement in one hand, the numbers staring back at him with mocking indifference. He was a pilot. He flew heavy machinery across continents, yet his account balance remained a flat, stagnant line. He had spent his earnings on a new vehicle and high-end trips. Convinced that the paycheck would naturally translate into security, it did not. The math was simple, brutal, and unforgiving. Every bill represented hours of labor already spent, gone to interest and depreciating assets. He looked at the pile again, feeling the weight of the paper in his hands. The air in the room felt thin. He had been working for years, yet he had nothing to show for it but a series of receipts and an empty savings account. The realization hit him with the force of a sudden drop in altitude. He was trapped in a cycle of earning and spending, running fast just to stay in the exact same place. The bills remained on the counter, but Michael stopped looking at the numbers. He turned away, his gaze sweeping the room for something, anything, that offered a way out. He pulled a dusty volume from the bottom shelf of his bookcase, flipping through pages he had ignored for years. His finger stopped on a paragraph by Napoleon Hill. Successful people make productive use of time that others waste. He read the sentence once, then a second time. The words did not just sit on the page. They felt like a physical weight shifting in his chest. He looked at his flight schedule pinned to the wall. Hundreds of hours, layovers in distant cities, empty hotel rooms. For years, he had viewed those hours as dead space, time to be killed with sleep or mindless noise. Now, he saw them as a vast, untapped resource. The anxiety in his gut hardened into a cold, sharp resolve. He grabbed a pen and crossed out the flight schedule's empty gaps, marking them with bold, heavy strokes. The apartment felt different. The silence was no longer a void. It was an opportunity. He had been a passenger in his own life, waiting for the destination to change. He decided that night to take the controls. The hotel door clicked shut, locking out the noise of the hallway. Most crews headed straight for the lobby bar or the local sites, their voices echoing toward the elevators. Michael walked past them, his bag heavy with law textbooks and market analysis reports. He entered his room and turned the deadbolt. The air was cool and smelled of industrial cleaner. He bypassed the bed and went straight to the small, glass-top desk. He moved the complimentary magazines aside, creating a clean space for his laptop and spreadsheets. Outside, the city lights flickered, but Michael did not look out the window. He opened a file on regional real estate trends. While his colleagues flickered through cable television channels in the rooms down the hall, Michael traced the lines of property appreciation and mortgage rates. He drank cold coffee from a thermos, his eyes scanning columns of data for hours on end. He was not just reading, he was building a mental map of the market. Every hour in that room was a brick in a foundation no one else could see. He tracked price-to-rent ratios until his eyes burned, his focus absolute and unyielding. The room was no longer a place to rest. It was a classroom, and he was the only student in the building. The ink on the closing documents was still dark when Michael walked into his first rental property. He pushed the front door open. It swung wide, revealing a hollow, echoing space that felt far larger than it had on paper. He held the brass key tight, his knuckles white against the metal. This was the asset he had spent months analyzing in hotel rooms across the continent. He walked to the center of the living room, his footsteps sounding sharp and unnatural against the bare floor. The excitement that had propelled him through the paperwork evaporated, replaced by a sudden, cold pressure in his chest. He looked at the peeling wallpaper and the shadows stretching across the ceiling. Every creak of the floorboards under his weight felt like a demand for money. He was no longer just a student of the market. He was the sole owner of a crumbling reality. The silence of the house was heavy, pressing against his ears. He realized that the spreadsheets had not prepared him for the physical presence of the debt. He stood still in the middle of the room, looking at the ceiling, feeling the full, terrifying gravity of the decision he had made. The freedom he sought felt miles away, buried under the weight of this single, silent structure. The notification chirped while Michael was checking his flight manifest. He tapped the screen. A text from his tenant appeared, followed immediately by a call. He stepped away from the boarding gate, pressing the phone to his ear. The voice on the other end was frantic, drowned out by a steady, rushing hiss. A pipe had burst in the basement. Water was rising, soaking the floorboards and threatening the electrical panel. Michael closed his eyes, visualizing the basement layout as the torrent roared over the speaker. He was scheduled for a cross-country flight in 20 minutes. He started barking instructions, his voice low and urgent. Locate the main shutoff valve. Turn it clockwise until it bites. He paced the terminal, ignoring the boarding calls as he pulled up a list of emergency contractors on his tablet. Then the tenant delivered a second blow. They were not paying this month's rent until the water was gone and the damage was assessed. Michael gripped the phone so tightly his hand began to cramp. He was thousands of miles from the source of the disaster, tethered to a catastrophe by nothing more than a signal and his own frantic resolve. He had to stop the flood before he left the ground. Michael unlocked the front door and walked down the basement stairs. The air was thick with the smell of damp earth and rot. He reached the bottom and stepped into the standing water, his boots soaked through instantly. The floor was a wreckage of warped wood and soaked drywall. He sank down onto a dry patch near the stairs, his back against the cold concrete wall. His hands trembled. He looked at the cracked pipe and the ruined insulation, then down at his phone. A dozen missed calls flashed on the screen. He could hear the hum of the aircraft engines in his memory, a reminder of the life he was currently neglecting for this nightmare. It would be so simple to walk away, to sell the property, absorb the loss, and return to the cockpit where the only problems were mechanical and predictable. He stared at the screen for a long count, the silence of the dark basement amplified by his own rapid breathing. His thumb hovered over the contact for the plumber. He looked at the water line on the wall. He gripped the phone, pushed himself up from the floor, and dialed. He was not finished yet. The repair bill was a punch to the gut, but Michael did not flinch. He cleared the debt, then tightened his budget until it snapped. Every surplus dollar from the rental income was funneled directly into index funds. He treated the process like a flight plan. He researched market entries while the cabin crew slept. He executed trades during 20-minute layovers in noisy, crowded terminals. When the market dipped, he did not panic. He studied the charts, analyzed the trends, and bought more. His life became a blur of altitude shifts and spreadsheet cells. He was no longer just a pilot. He was a machine of incremental accumulation. The cycle was relentless. Research, execute, review. Research, execute, review. He stopped buying luxury upgrades for his home. He ignored the lifestyle creep that claimed his colleagues. Instead, he tracked the compound interest as if it were a navigation waypoint. The momentum began to shift. The rental income covered the repairs, and the dividends started to cover the rent. He was building a wall of capital, one trade at a time, turning empty hours into a relentless engine of financial growth. 10 years had passed, and the rhythm remained unchanged. The crew lounge was loud, filled with the static of radio chatter and the low hum of conversation, but Michael sat in his usual corner, isolated by his focus. He scrolled through a dense set of spreadsheets, his fingers tapping a steady beat against the edge of the laptop. A young pilot, fresh-faced and carrying a heavy flight bag, stopped in his tracks. He watched Michael for a moment, then gestured vaguely at the screen. "Why bother?" the younger man asked, his voice tinged with genuine confusion. You are already a captain. You have the salary. Why spend every layover buried in these numbers? Michael stopped tapping. He did not look up immediately, instead finishing his entry before closing the distance between them. He slid the laptop across the table, turning the display toward the younger man. The screen was a map of passive revenue streams. Michael leaned forward, his voice low and firm. One income source pays the bills, he said, tapping the screen for emphasis. Multiple income sources create freedom. The young pilot stared at the data, the silence in the lounge suddenly feeling heavy. Michael pulled the laptop back. He had not just built a career, he had built a way out. At 50, the airport lounge felt different. The same planes climbed into the clouds. The same jet engines roared, but the weight of the work was gone. Michael sat by the floor-to-ceiling windows, watching the horizon. He pulled his phone from his pocket. The property management app pinged a steady stream of rent deposits. He swiped to his brokerage account. The dividend growth curve was no longer a projection, but a reality. His investment income had officially surpassed his pilot salary. The math that had occupied his layovers for decades was now his lifeblood. He looked at the terminal floor, then back at the sky. He had not built this safety net in the cockpit, nor in the air. He had built it in the quiet, empty hours that everyone else had discarded. He closed his book, the leather cover snapping shut with a finality that echoed in the quiet corner. He stood up, adjusted his bag, and walked toward the gate for his next flight. He was no longer working to pay for his life. He was working because he chose to. The time he had spent had finally paid him back in full. He walked into the jet bridge, free.